All right. Well, just like that, I know it's the end of the workday, so I want to get right to it. My name is Sam Wegner. I am the Environmental Stewardship Program Manager for Lower Phelan Creek Project. And if you're here, you are watching All About Pollinators, which is a great event that we're happy to host with a number of partner organizations. We're going to have a number of short presentations and then an opportunity for you all to share any questions, observations, or comments that you have on pollinators right here in St. Paul. And before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Michaela Bowman, to ground us and sort of give a better picture about our organization and the work that we do.
Well, Sam, Hamidakuyapi Chante Washte na Pe Chuzapie, Michaela Bowman Amakiapie, Damakota de Sisitun Korbeton Oya de Hemata, Dayanya Hippie, de Damakoche Hippie. Hello, my relatives. My name is Michaela. I am Dakota and belong to the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate out in South Dakota. Really happy to see everybody here. I said I greet you with a good heart. And then I just gave us a reminder that right now we are occupying stolen Dakota land. Sam and I work for an organization called Lower Phelan Creek Project, and we are a native-led environmental nonprofit located on the east side of St. Paul. And a lot of our work comes out of Wakantipi or Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. And that is a Dakota sacred site nestled right between sort of Indian Mounds Park and the Hahawakwa or the Mississippi River. And it's a place that's seen a lot of love, a lot of community, but also a lot of destruction, pollution, and alteration. And within like the last couple decades here, we've been working really hard to keep that land restored, you know, tackling invasive species and planting native species. And I have really some exciting news to share today. You know, ever since we've kept doing a lot of the restoration at Wakantipi, our plant relatives and our animal relatives are returning to those spaces. So we recently had a beaver move into the middle pond. We have 2 eagles nesting in the cottonwoods. And every year I see more and more medicines come back to that land. So it's just a testament to, you know, when we can care for the land as a relative. In our language, we say unshimaka or kunshimaka or even inamaka, which means grandmother earth, mother earth. And we say that because it's important for us in the Dakota Wichohan or the Dakota way of life that we are treating the land, the waters, and all of her children essentially as relatives. So, you know, our plants are our relatives, the water is our relatives, the pollinators, they're our relatives. And when we can act in that way, they start to come back, especially in these urban areas that have gone through so much. So I'm really excited to hear from everybody today and how we can be better relatives to our pollinators. One of the things that we can do to be good relatives is to learn their names, learn their stories, and learn how we can protect them. So I'm really excited. Thank you everybody for being here. Sorry, that was a longer rant than I thought I was gonna go on.
No apologies, and we have nothing but time here. So thank you so much for that, Michaela. I think that really helps situate us. And with that, I would like to welcome our first group, the University of Minnesota Bee Squad. I'm going to hand it over to Bridget and her team. Thank you so much.
Okay. Share my screen. Hi, everybody. My name is Bridget Mendel, and I am the program director of the University of Minnesota Bee Squad. And the Bee Squad is situated within the University of Minnesota Bee Lab. And our mission at the Bee Squad is to help people help pollinators. We promote health and diversity of pollinators through education, through mentorship, and through outreach. We are very honored to be here at this event with you all, and very honored to be learning from and supporting the work of the Lower Phelan Creek Project. It's very exciting. And I'm also very excited to introduce to you that we have a large team at the Bee Squad. We do a lot of different programs, and hopefully for those of you, I see a lot of familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know us, you'll check out our website and find more about what we do. We have a large team, and as of last week, it just grew a little bit more. We have 2 new Bee Squatters, and they are our undergraduate student workers, which we're very, very excited about. And that is Stephen Tolentino and Elise Bernstein. And they are both responsible for this slideshow, and this is their very first outreach event. So please welcome them and support their beginning at the Bee Squad. They're going to share with you a very short primer on, just what are pollinators? What are our pollinators here in this particular geography, and why are they important? And of course, they are so fundamental to all of our lives, for our food systems, for our wild systems, and for our restored ecosystems. I hope that all of you listening will feel welcome to contact the Bee Squad as a resource as you learn about pollinators, as you have questions about bees. And so besides this short introduction, I hope this kind of inspires people to see us as a resource. We're right on the St. Paul campus, and our job is really to help people in whatever way we can as they learn about bees. And we have a lot of resources on our website too. And if, so as you're thinking of questions, or you're coming up with ideas, or maybe you think of them after this presentation, always kind of go back to the website, and you'll probably get lost, but that's why we're here, and we will share our contact information at the end as well too. So I will turn it over to Stephen, if I can move my slides. All right.
All right. Hi. So, what are bees? As you may know, bees are a type of pollinating insect, and they're one of the many creatures on planet Earth that help us pollinate flowers. Bats, butterflies, and even birds are all types of pollinators in different parts of the world. Bees collect pollen to feed their young, and they move more pollen than any other pollinators. There's about 20,000 different species of bees that live in different habitats across the world. You've probably heard of the bumblebee and the honeybee, but there's many other types of bees as well that come in many different sizes and colors.
Here in Minnesota, we have 469 different species of bees, but that number is always going up since researchers are always finding new types of bees. However, 1/3 of all bumblebees are in decline. Some bumblebees, like the rusty-patched bumblebee, which is Minnesota's state bee, are in danger of going extinct. This means that the number of bees in their population is rapidly declining. Other bees, like the honeybee, still have large populations and are not in decline, but instead have health issues.
So what's causing their decline, and what we can do to help? Fewer flowers, more pesticides, parasites, diseases, and of course, global climate change are affecting bee populations all over the world. What we could do is to help provide new homes for bees and plant more flowers for them to forage, as well as making sure that these new areas are pesticide-free. Bigger picture ways we could help the bees would be to take climate action by raising awareness and doing what you can to help stop climate change, and even collecting data about pollinators to see what their current situation is.
Helping with data could consist of surveying bees, which helps scientists understand the ranges in populations of different species and allows them to better understand geographical changes. Participating in pollinator surveys would allow us to get to know diverse bee species. Even learning the names of plants and pollinators could help change how we value them. All in all, knowledge about what is happening with our pollinators is key in preserving and restoring them.
So why are pollinators important? Pollinators, like bees, bats, butterflies, and lots of other animals and insects, provide a lot of services to both plants and animals, including us humans. Bees move pollen between different flowers, which helps them produce fruits, nuts, and seeds. As these flowers grow, they're able to provide homes for other small creatures. Larger creatures can then feed on the creatures that live in these plants or the plants themselves.
Pollinators do a lot of unique things for humans as well. Many of the foods that we love aren't possible without the help of pollinators. Many of the foods that we farm, like most of the fruits, nuts, seeds, and some vegetables. Many people think that animal products like dairy and meat are not affected by pollinators. However, pollinators like bees help with alfalfa production, which is a plant that cows love to graze on. Because bees help cows thrive, without them, we wouldn't have foods like pizza and even ice cream. Pollinator experts at the Bee Squad at the University of Minnesota have put together a set of pollinator toolkits that can educate people about bees and pollinators and the problems that they are currently facing. The kits contain science-based information about bees using interactive features like games. These free toolkit pieces can be found online at blab.umn.edu/pollinator education toolkits or for checkout from interlibrary loan.
So, what are we doing here? I grew up watching a lot of National Geographic and Animal Planet as a kid. So, at a young age, I kind of became an environmentalist. And then in high school, I joined an environmental club that raised money to donate to good causes, as well as planting a pollinator garden for my school. That didn't end up happening because of the pandemic, but the plans are still there, so hopefully it'll happen. I ended up taking an entomology class at the university, and from there, they recommended that I apply to the Bee Squad, and here I am now.
I'm Elise, and my role with the Bee Squad is what I consider to be a long time coming. For several years, my nickname has literally been Elise Bee, so this was kind of the perfect job for me. And for as long as I can remember, I've loved spending time outside. Especially when I was a little kid, I loved to play with bugs and just like get dirty and see what kind of pollinators were hanging out in my backyard. So I'm a junior now at the University of Minnesota studying environmental science, and I'm really passionate about learning how we can protect our planet and prevent further damages from climate change. And my role with the Bee Squad is really teaching me a lot about how we can make those changes.
Okay, thank you so much, Elise and Stephen. That was awesome. And before I pass it along to the Great River Greening folks, I will just encourage you to explore the resources we have, especially on our Bee Lab website. There's just a lot in terms of different guides, both for hosting through planting or planting food or habitat for our pollinators, and then also different trainings and resources we have to support people as they want to learn more about the pollinators we have in this area. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Bee Squad folks. It's I can't tell you how awesome it is to see. I call you young people because you're still in college, but how great it is to see young people involved in this work. I think you'll hear a little bit more how young people have been involved in the work that we do at Lower Phelan Creek Project literally for over 20 years. And what Becca and Amy are about to talk about is a project that young people and people of all ages can get involved in. So I'm really excited to pass it over to Great River Greening.
All right, now we get to the exciting tech part. Amy, are you gonna share the screen?
Perfect. Let me find the screen. It seems to have moved on me. One second.
Well, while Amy is doing that, I'll just give a very brief introduction of Great River Greening. So we are a nonprofit habitat restoration and conservation organization based in St. Paul, just across the river. And we work to inspire, engage, and lead local communities in conserving and caring for the land and water that enrich our lives. We do all sorts of work with the community. Very excited to be working with Lower Failing Creek Project and City of St. Paul. And we facilitate conservation and habitat restoration actions on anything from city parks to school, possibly pollinator gardens, so we should talk later, and a lot of volunteer event too. So things from pollinator planting to invasive species removal, and we're moving more towards collaborating with the U of M Bee Lab and other organizations like the Xerxes Society and individual local groups to monitor, to pay attention and engage in our local parks and areas. And one of the ways that we're going to be able to do that is through iNaturalist. So I don't remember if I said my name or not. I'm Becca Tucker, the Twin Cities Metro Program Manager, and I'll pass to Amy for a little bit to introduce her.
Hello, thanks, Becca. I am Amy Kilgore. I'm the Outreach Program Manager for Great River Greening. So I oversee all of the kind of volunteer events and community outreach Becca mentioned. And I'm very excited because just a couple of weeks ago, I actually stopped by the Bee Lab to pick up our pollinator education and outreach toolkit. And I just can't speak highly enough to what a great resource they are and they're providing to everyone. So do check that out. And yeah, one of the ways we're looking to engage more folks is with iNaturalist, like Becca mentioned, and using it to monitor some projects and get more people involved. And it was a tool we thought would be really great, especially as people were exploring ways to volunteer more independently due to recent circumstances. So it's a really great community, and we will tell you more about how to use it.
So iNaturalist, what is it? It is very broadly a way to pay attention to our local surroundings, to keep lists of what kind of things we're seeing, and to learn both personally and collectively. One of the things that was mentioned was an action that we can be taking to be present with our local ecology is to learn the names and learn the stories of the things that we see around us. And we'll go through how iNaturalist is, I think, a pretty great portal to be able to do that both individually and as a group. So iNaturalist is created by National Geographic and California Academy of Sciences. It is an online community of individuals like you and me, organizations, nonprofits, cities, pretty much anyone that can interact with literally any living organism can interact with iNaturalist. And the purpose of it is to record, identify, and organize observations. You can go to the next slide. So the basics. iNaturalist is a platform of technology. So it's accessible through either the website itself, iNaturalist.org, or through an app, which you can download just like you would download any other app on a smartphone or a web-enabled device. It's on iPhones and Androids and all that sort of thing. So you can either go through the website or through the app, but functionally all of the interactions are going to be going through the same steps. So what we're going to do is go through those steps right now. And this is going to be really brief and pretty much of a big overview, and we'll go through as much as we can, but I would suggest just trying it out and you'll get a feel for it as you move through it. So what are observations? Pretty much if you can see it and it is living, it can be an observation. The pieces of the observation are pretty much who you are. So the first step through all of this is once you've gotten to the website or downloaded the app is to make a profile. And it's just the ability to log in over and over again so that you can kind of keep your list going and this information is saved. So the first piece of this is who you are, where you sought, and we'll go over how you can either use your phone to give the location or navigate through the maps to pin it, but basically just where was the thing you saw, what you saw. So taking a picture of it. This can be taken with a phone, any kind of camera, as long as you can upload that picture to this portal. When you saw it, so the date and time, just so that we know kind of seasonality, when it was, and then any other evidence. So any other sounds or things that you noticed as you made the observation.
So once you have been out exploring and taking photos, you'll take your photos and you can either take the photo within the app itself or just upload from your kind of camera roll, your smartphone, or as you put them onto your computer to bring them into the website. So the steps are roughly the same, but you'll take your observation, add your observation. I believe you can add 1 to 4 photos within the app. Multiple photos are always good to add kind of supporting evidence. And then if you have location surfaces turned on within your app and your phone, a lot of this data will autofill right from the image. So it'll do a geotag to add the location, and then the date and time should autofill as well. You're able to edit those, of course, if they are not reflected appropriately. So those come in kind of automatically, and then you'll save your observation, and the what you see, the number 3 box there, the AI, the app itself, will do its best to kind of scan its database of photos and suggest some species that it thinks your image might be of. So you can kind of do a really simple analysis there, or kind of explore deeper based on what you know about it, or suggest the closest species or animal that you think it might be, and then the community kind of does the rest. So once you upload it to the iNaturalist community, folks are able to see that observation and they can agree with what you say you saw or suggest new identifications. So kind of a tip with the photography, really try to make sure your image, the object is really close up and in focus. You can crop in on the image to get a kind of a better focus on the specific plant or critter you're targeting. Adding multiple images and angles is really beneficial. And you can also provide kind of a scale reference by, if you're able, with, you know, sticking your boot or your foot or your hand near the object, or even a pen or some other object to kind of provide scale. That can be helpful as well. So here you can see a rust patch bumblebee that Becca was lucky enough to capture in the field. And so you can see here she submitted several photos of the bee checking out the plant, and then submitted those for additional resources. So then kind of walking through uploading your observation through a phone or mobile device. Here is Becca out at Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. She and I went out there last week to explore and see what was popping up as well. And thank you for the great excuse to get out and check out the beautiful space. We were able to find some interesting greenery popping up, as well as remnants from last fall still. So here she's taking a photo of this plant. You can see she's using her hand and her phone to kind of provide scale and get a closer focus on it. And then the second image here is kind of the camera roll as you're going to add your observations to iNaturalist. You can see we've selected 3 images there, 2 kind of different shots of the plant and 1 with your hand kind of blocking it off to really provide that focus. So once you select the images, since I was logged in and I had those geo services turned on my phone, it provided the like time and date stamp for me and the location within the park where we saw it. And then you can see some of the suggestions the app made. It says, we're pretty sure this is in the genus. And then it shows you kind of the first tier, and then it breaks it down to different species that it might be similar to. So then you make your selection from there and send it off into iNaturalist, and it should be reflected within the boundary of the park or on the map if you wanted to check them out and see what other folks are seeing there. And then from the website, things work very similarly. So this is after selecting an image to upload through the iNaturalist.org platform. And they're similar, the fields kind of look a little bit different, but the image and the information that it's looking for is basically the same. You'll add the image, date, location, and then you select the species you think it's closest to if you're unsure, and then push the green button up in the upper right-hand corner there. It says submit one observation. It's kind of tiny there on my screen. But once you submit, it sends it up. And then this is what you would see if you went back in to your profile to take a look at that observation. So you're able to see the image and then the ID down under activity. You can see it says A. Kilgore suggested an ID. So that's a pretty broad category. So if folks are better at IDing, they can come on and see that and suggest something more specific. And then the map on the right here just kind of shows other spots in the area that this observation was also made. So it's kind of a good way to see if you're on the right track, if other folks have said they've seen this in the same area.
And very quickly, so how does this connect to Lower Phelan Creek Project and City St. Paul parks, and specifically Wakan Tipi? Well, projects. So the whole goal of all of this is to learn more, learn stories, and make observations and share observations with the community. So projects are a way of pretty much drawing a geographical boundary around any particular location, and then automatically collecting any observations that have been made within that boundary, and in this case, within a time period. So BioBlitz between April 1st and April 30th. There's plants out right now. The pollinators are coming. Gosh darn it, it's almost spring. I think it's supposed to be 70 again this weekend. So we are pretty excited to contribute as much as we can for this project with the partners, as well as other projects that we ourselves will be hosting throughout the cities and into this year. Pretty excited to explore this platform. So that was incredibly brief. Biggest tip for all of this is to get a user account. It is free, forgot to mention that part, and try it out, especially now that we've got pollinators coming out and plants are easy to take pictures of. They don't move. Practice on those things, upload your pictures, and then get ready for all the pollinators, birds, all kinds of any mammals, literally any life can be an observation. So I think that's mostly what we've got.
Yeah, then we were just, sorry, go ahead, Becca.
No, I was going to say the exact same thing you were. There's all kinds of information. We've got these links that Sam will share, both checking out the iNaturalist tutorials as well as a couple other websites.
Yeah, their resources are amazing on the iNaturalist website. There's really great video tutorials and guides as well. But I think at least what worked best for me was just getting the app up and going and exploring local parks, even my backyard. And it's really helped me learn a lot more about the plants and critters, even in my own backyard. So.
Thank you, Becca and Amy. Really appreciate it. I think sometimes it's easy to see like a technology like iNaturalist and say, well, either you know it or it's not familiar enough and I won't try it. But this is pretty user friendly. I gotta say, in my experience, the only thing that'll make this hard is if your phone doesn't hold charge. So I know I can only ever get a couple of observations, but I also just wanted to thank you both because as you kind of hinted or briefly described, we are going to be starting a BioBlitz at Wakan TP starting tomorrow. So everybody on this call, you have a pretty wonderful opportunity if you're new to the app or if you're just looking to get out to Wakan TP. And as Becca and Amy mentioned, this is also a resource that you can use in your own backyard if you don't live in the Twin Cities. This is really valuable for getting information about our non-human ecosystem wherever you are. Before I hand it over to Mary at the city, I wanted to just answer a question from Hope, which was, are we also looking at what plant or pollinator food source the pollinator may be visiting? And the answer to that question is an emphatic absolutely. Yeah, so you'll notice that some projects on iNaturalist only want, you know, a certain species or a certain type of life. And we've left this open because I think as some people were mentioning, the pollinators are coming back, but you might be seeing more plants than pollinators at this stage of the spring. And as we'll explain a little bit more, we are just really excited to use this app in 2021 to get a better picture of all the life that is thriving at Wakan TP and at the sanctuary. We have a special interest in pollinators, and we're really glad to be with a lot of organizations that are keying in on those relatives. But kind of like we said, we're excited to see everything that's going on. Someone else I see asking about a link to the specific project. We will either get that link sent in the chat here, but I will also be sending a follow-up email to everybody that it'll have a whole host of links and breakdowns. So you're going to have multiple opportunities to encounter all these great resources. With that, Mary, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us a little bit more about community science and kind of what the city's bringing to the table here.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me be a part of this. My name is Mary Gahaney. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the education coordinator for St. Paul Natural Resources, which is within Parks and Rec. So I'll give you something more interesting to look at here than just my face. So St. Paul Natural Resources is a group of programs that are responsible for managing the natural resources in St. Paul's Park. So that's our urban forestry program, the folks who manage our urban forest. Any tree on public land is taken care of by them. It's our gardening program that manage in-ground and raised bed gardens throughout the city, including downtown. It's our habitat management folks. So we have 2 year-round staff members that collectively manage 2,300 acres of natural parkland in St. Paul. So if there's not a building, there isn't a baseball diamond, it's not mowed turf grass. It's one of those 2 year-round staff members taking care of that. That's a huge task. So actually we have a volunteer program to help get ordinary folks like you that care about what we're doing to come out and help us take care of our parks. It's a big job and it can't be done by any 1, 2, or 20 of us. So it takes all people throughout the entire city to help keep our ecosystem safe. And my program is the education program. So my job is to just help people here in St. Paul understand that we live in an ecosystem. St. Paul is an ecosystem with a lot of diverse and interconnected parts that rely on each other to survive and thrive, whether they're human or non-human, whether it's natural or unnatural. We're all in this together, and we all rely and depend on each other. So what we would love from all of you is to get involved and help us take care of our resources here. So there's a couple ways you can do that. If you're particularly interested in Wakan TP, we have a series of volunteer events that happen there throughout the summer called Restore. They're programs that happen on weeknights, on weekends. Anybody can register and come out, and we do different projects depending on what the season and what needs to be done at that time. So we would love to see each and every one of you come on out and help us take care of the park. I'm excited about the presentation we just got from Great River Greening about iNaturalist, because we as land managers here with the city find people like you being out in parks collecting that data for us to be very valuable. We have access to that data just like anybody else. So if we can't be in every park at all times to see who's there and what's happening in terms of, you know, the ecosystem, the natural parts, it's great for us to be able to see what you're seeing there. And we have learned things. We've found people on iNaturalist spotted an invasive species growing in a spot that we didn't know that it was growing yet. And we've also seen people find, you know, beneficial plants that we didn't know were growing there, including things like, you know, we have in the past done, and we still do, we don't have our schedule finalized for this year, but we do wildlife surveys with folks. And in the past, we've worked with the Bee Lab to do bumblebee surveys. And people that have come out to those have then spotted rusty patch bumblebees in different parks. So helping kind of collect that data so that we as land managers can make informed decisions about where do we direct our efforts and how can we get you folks involved. So we would love to see any or all of you come out this summer. I will throw the links to this volunteer registration into the chat so you can all see that. And we'd love to get you connected. And I hope you can get out there and enjoy our parks. And while you're out there, maybe take some pictures and share them with us via iNaturalist. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to Lower Phelan Creek Project for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I just love the way our conversation has flowed, because Mary just sort of introduced that, you know, even outside of this BioBlitz, Lower Phelan Creek Project and the city are going to have at least 15 distinct opportunities for you to join us in some of the habitat restoration and care work that we're doing at WCAWTP and the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. So with about 20 minutes left here, I'm going to share my screen one more time. And there we go. Is everybody seeing this in full screen? Okay, awesome. I want to take a little more time with my coworker, Michela, for us to talk about, you know, why community science, why interacting with our non-human relatives here at WCAWTP and the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, why that's of particular importance to a native-led organization, and also what that process looks like for us. So, Michela, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I was wondering if you could maybe share with us some of the history of this site, what makes it a sacred site, and sort of what that means both to native and non-native people who want to help care for this place.
Of course. Are you going to show some of the pictures? Perfect. Okay. So this is a watercolor done by a relative named Eastman back in the late 1800s, and this is of the Dayton Bluff area. So right next to WCAWTP, you can see the Hahawa, the Mississippi River, and in Mni Sota are what we call those white sandstone bluffs above that you see all across the riverfront. And WCAWTP, also known as Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, started out as a Dakota sacred site. So our relatives have come to this area, and there's a cave inside of Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary that our community calls WCAWTP Cave. And so that's why we call this area WCAWTP. And in our language, Waka, though it's really hard to translate into English, it sort of means sacred, or that life force that moves through us all, that or you know, English fails us in translation. And then tipi means the place where they live. So it's really talking about these spirits that lived in this cave, or that live in this cave. And so our ancestors would go there to have ceremony. And up above on the bluffs is where we would put our relatives to rest, and the Indian moms up above. And our relatives are really intentional, right? We have the mounds up above, we have WCAWTP here, and we have the river here. And we live in a very like Western society that likes us to compartmentalize these spaces. But in reality, everything's connected, kind of like what our relatives at Bee Squad had to say. You know, our pollinators are connected to the cows, that are connected to the food that we eat. And in our language, we have a phrase, Midakuye Oyasin, which means all of my relations. You know, we're all connected, we're all related. And so this place is really special to Dakota people. But following the War of 1862, our relatives were exiled out of the state of Minnesota. So we were not able to care for our sacred sites anymore. And with the coming of settlers and colonization and industrialization, this area really became polluted, altered, and the railroad blasted 3 meters in with dynamite into our sacred site, into that cave. And so the next 100 years, this area really became an unofficial city dumping ground where people would just come and take their trash, and nobody was really taking care of the land anymore as a relative. And so in 1977, that's when our organization sort of began to start with a wave of community activists and volunteers who didn't want to see this land be destroyed anymore. And it was largely a lot of Hmong community members that were actually from, you know, urban roots, but they had a different name back then. And so everyone got together and we removed 50 tons of trash from this area. That's a lot of tons of trash. And as well, the soil needed to be remediated. So the railroads were carrying contaminants like asbestos and mercury that leaked into the soil. And so then, you know, we had to remediate the soil as well. So here are just some of those beginning restoration pictures that we have of Wakantipi, or Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, before it was officially announced as a park. And our people weren't taking care of that land anymore. And then you can go to the next slide, Sam, or the next couple. And so the restoration started and community really stepped in. And it was a really beautiful thing. I'm gonna keep going. And then one more, I think. Perfect. And so that is a picture from 2017, 2018. And so I love this picture because it reminds me a lot of our responsibility, right? So before I mentioned that in our cultural and spiritual way of being, we relate, back please, we relate to the earth as a relative. And when you do that, you have a responsibility to care for her, to care for the plants and care for the animals. Can you go back, Sam, one? Okay, as a relative. And so, you know, we are all living on stolen, and we sort of have a responsibility, right? Or what is our responsibility then? And I would like to offer our responsibility can look at taking care of the land, taking care of the plants so that our pollinator relatives can return, our animal relatives can return, and that our people can return. There's so much in our society right now that divides us from being in with the land. You know, I know a lot of us are working from home, right? And even through a pandemic, we're being very worked right now. And sometimes it can even be hard to get outside. But if we can get outside and if we can care for the lands and waterways around us, we're not only helping our own connection to the land, we're inviting and nurturing the return of a lot of our pollen animal relatives and just non-human kin in general. And everything, you know, everything's connected, and we have a really big responsibility to as humans. And you know, our pollinators too, they are such a good analogy for that saying of Midakuye Oyasin, well related. I think here I've heard pollinators die, everything is going to crumble. And so it only takes one being to really connect us all. And Sam, do you have any thoughts you would like to add?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Michaela. I think it's, you know, something that we can never spend enough time on is talking about what makes Wakantipi unique, both in terms of all the loss that has been suffered there, but also the really unique and rare opportunity that we have had to put so much care and love and life back into this space. And so I think the only thing that I really want to share with the group is that 2021 is a special and important year for us in a lot of ways. So not only was 2020 the 15th anniversary of the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary becoming open to the public. So even to get this place to where it was 15 years ago took a lot of years of behind the scenes work. As we mentioned, right, a lot of youth were involved in that. 15 years on, we see a ton of success. We see a lot of thriving in this place, but we also unfortunately see areas where we can improve, and areas, frankly, that need more than a little bit of improving. They need almost a complete habitat restoration. We're talking about it kind of from a Western scientific perspective. So this map that you're looking at and this map that you're looking at were both produced for us by ecologists from Friends of the Mississippi River. And they produced for us a 5-year plan to sort of really help maximize the benefits of this place, really put everything that we can into this ecosystem. And so 2021 is going to be year 1 of this plan. And we thought, what better opportunity to match all of the work that we're doing with our partner organizations with observations from our community? Why not get as many chances to document it, to see what plants and what wildlife is doing well, and what are some other areas where we can be improving. So these maps here just show you kind of some of the breakdowns, and if anybody would like to reach out and learn more about what we're doing at specific parts of the sanctuary, please feel free. But
I'd also
the long and short of it,
add,
oh, go ahead.
real quick, that part of the work that we're doing is not just removing invasive species, but focusing on what native plant relatives we can bring back into the sanctuary that are culturally relevant to Dakota people and native people in general. We have generations of knowledge on how the ecosystems in this area of the world live together, what works well, what works as medicine. You know, for me in particular, there are some plants that I'm really excited to reintroduce in this area that will not only benefit native people in terms of knowing what medicines are in this area, but they will also invite more pollinators too. So for example, inviting roads back into this space, or all of these other native flowers that I can think of that haven't really had the chance yet to thrive at Wakantipi, but will hold significant value for us native people as well as pollinators too. And so that is an aspect of our work that I'm super pumped to get to once we can get a better handle on our misplaced relatives, also known as invasive species.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that's a good reminder too, that as amazing as this event has been, it doesn't do justice to like the true value and beauty of getting to work with the ecosystem down at Wakantipi. And so that's why I think we're encouraging you all, at least in the month of April, to get out on your own time and interact with this space. We're also going to be down at the sanctuary on April 24th, which is Earth Day weekend. We'll see more plants, more pollinators in the area by that time, but we're also going to use that opportunity to clean up some of the trash and debris that's accumulated in the sanctuary over the past year. So as I mentioned, we're going to be sending you all these links and opportunities, and starting in May, we're going to have really more distinct chances for you to come down. Yes, we're going to work with some of the invasive species that are not encouraging more biodiversity, but I think we're also going to try and work towards bringing more of those plant relatives back to this space. And of course, sharing all the knowledge that we get from ourselves and all the knowledge that you all bring to it as participants as well. So with that, we have about 9 minutes left officially, but I would like to open the space up to anybody who might have questions or comments. Feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all talk to each other. Okay, so I am looking at the chat here. Are the maps available on our website? Not yet, Nydia, that's a great question, but I think we could look into making those public. Those are sort of the like in-house documents that our friends at Friends of the Mississippi River produce for us, but I'm sure they wouldn't have a problem with that being, you know, public knowledge. Dave Crawford asks, how should we record observations on iNaturalist after April 30th? That's a great question, Dave. I think it was Amy or Becca who was talking about how this BioBlitz is going to be taking place directly at the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, which is logged as its own location on iNaturalist. So after April 30th, that project will be closed. But if you're ever at Wakantipi, if you record an observation, it'll tell you that you recorded it in that spot. So you should be able to come down. We would love for you to come down after April 30th. I'm glad you posed that. Elaine asks, is there a registration for the April 24th cleanup? There is, and that's going to be part of the, we're going to have a whole suite of things to send you after this. But if you want to go register right now, you can find that at lowerphelanCreek.org/events. That's listed as one of our upcoming opportunities, and that's going to be through the city. So one thing to mention about this, the April 24th cleanup, is that you can do that at any public space. You could even do that in your backyard if you live in the city of St. Paul. Selfishly, we'd love you to come down and spend the day with us, but we totally understand if you'd like to be elsewhere too.
I'm loving all of these answers to your favorite pollinator plants. You know, every time I see those plants in English, I always think of their Dakota names. And so plants that are really good for pollinators are also really good for us. They're incredibly medicinal. And that's a whole other webinar, right? But there's just so much medicine when you look at the restoration of our ecosystems. What I see is just medicine. I see medicines for the pollinators. I see medicines for our non-human kin, and I see medicines for ourselves. And it's just about remembering that relationality and returning to these places in a really good way. Echinacea, coneflower, ichachvihu, my favorite. I would also, I forgot to mention before, is when you're coming to spaces that are specifically Dakota sacred sites, to always make sure that you're coming to these spaces in a good way, that your heart's in a good place, that your spirit's in a good place. Our sacred sites, they feel those, that they feel your spirit. And for me, whenever I visit Wakantipi, I always come with an offering of our tobacco or red willow, but whatever your people's tradition is, I really recommend that when you enter these spaces that you're at least coming in a good way. And if you can bring an offering, and even if it's an offering of, you know, just when you're entering and you're saying thank you, just a simple way that we can reconnect ourselves to spaces in a good way. Saying out loud thank you is an action that we can all do, and it's super easy, but it's incredible to see how even that can center you in a space.
You know, Michaela, I was just, someone's asking if we've had one of these events, a webinar on medicinal plants. And so we did have a webinar last spring called Pejuta wo Yaksape, in which we had 3 amazing knowledge keepers share some information with us. And so we will be sure to link to that as well. But Michaela, one thing I wanted to mention was I got to be on an event recently with Linda Black Elk, who was one of our presenters at that event. And she was talking about bee balm and how its antibacterial qualities both protect pollinators from mites and have really valuable antibacterial qualities for human medicinal use. And I just find that really beautiful that you have in one plant, sort of like you said, Michaela, right? Plants can be beneficial to one aspect of our ecosystem, and to some of our relatives, they can be beneficial to us. And it's just really beautiful to see how much our plant relatives have to offer.
Yeah, I would also too just suggest that everybody follow us on our Instagram and Facebook at Lower Phelan Creek Project. Now, as we're sort of walking into spring and summer, I manage our social media, by the way. And one of my favorite parts of spring and summer is taking pictures of our plant relatives at Wakan Tipi. Elevating their Dakota names, their cultural uses, and stories that we have of them too. So that would definitely be a way to get a sort of mini snapshot of that knowledge. And then keep your eye out for a webinar in May. That's all I'm going to say.
We're just full of surprises here.
I just wanted to add something about, I think it's so exciting that you're starting with this bio blitz in the beginning of the month, because the other thing, to think about, it's just all these different kinds of pollinators have, they emerge at different times. Some of them are only out for like a short window of time, or maybe early spring. We see that like Coletti's coming out really, really early. You might find those ground nesting bees. And then, they go through these different parts of their own life cycle throughout the summer, as do obviously the plants. So if you're following these different plants that we love throughout the season, you're also going to find really different pollinators interacting. And some of them you might be surprised to learn are even pollinators, because they look different than the sort of like image you might have. So I think that's one of the exciting things about starting early. And then, if it's a place that you love, to continually visit and find out, what's there next time.
Neely Snyder from Dream of Wild Health just posted in the chat, and I totally forgot about this, but on Earth Day, they are hosting a Sacred Medicines and Garden Beginnings workshop. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. It's going to be amazing, but I think that's April 22nd, 5 to 7 p.m. And if you just want to look up Dream of Wild Health, but I'm sure you all are connected, but that is going to be a lovely way to just enter us into Earth Day and spring. And gardening and medicines.
I also just wanted to say, Bridget, thank you for kind of reminding us. Forgive me, are there over 200 species of native bee in Minnesota alone?
There's over double that.
Over double that. Yeah. So talk about, we're making iNaturalist sound like just something for fun. I think you're going to need iNaturalist to be able to figure out some of these species, because it's, I know a lot of people think pollinators and they just think bumblebee, but there's a whole lot more.
And I love what Michaela said in the beginning about learning the names, and both, there's the common names, there are the indigenous names and the scientific names, and, like learning those all, like, it just seems like, wow, you're going to really know that species after that, so yeah, you definitely, I don't know, I can't identify so many of our bees still, so it's tricky. I know Dr. Elaine Evans is on here too, and she's can really get to all the different bumblebees, but you won't expect to do that in a season. That takes decades, but you can start to learn those names, even if it's just a few.
Yeah, if you think about treating pollinators as relatives, you would sort of never not ask someone their name when you first meet them, and so working and being intentional about learning the names of plant relatives and pollinator relatives and animal relatives is a really great way that we can begin to deepen our relationship with them and then show them some respect. They do so much for us. They provide food, medicine, shelter, life, air, everything. And learning their names is a really good way that we can be in reciprocal relation with them.
And I just want to add one quick note on getting to know all those pollinators. A lot of it is kind of a is changing your mind frame when you're looking at flowers, and we naturally are drawn to movement and big things moving around. But if you get yourself to just stand still in front of a group of flowers and sit and observe, you'll start to see smaller and smaller things that are interacting with the flowers, and these intricate relationships that these different pollinators have with the different flowers kind of comes out as you let those kind of layers to zoom in happen with time.
And echoing that real quick too, is this can be done anywhere, that kind of observation, repeated observation too. If there's any green space, you've got a yard, a side planting area, or a neighborhood park that you can get to daily or twice a week or once a month, any kind of interaction just kind of familiarizes yourself with a specific area. You get to see that change over time and start noticing those different layers, those different connections, the different, grass stems that you might not have ever paid attention to before, things coming out of that. And like they've said, everything is connected, and the more you look, the more you see, and the more you kind of learn. And I think this project and these collaborations, I'm pretty excited about it. So.
Thank you both, Elaine and Becca, for that. And I think it's also a good reminder that the last thing we're asking people to do is to go outside and then only have their phone out, right? So your first and best like observational tools are always going to be your eyes, your ears, your senses, and your spirit. And we really want you to go into Wakantipi, the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, anytime that you get to be outside. We really want you to prioritize like being in that space. If you also get the chance to record some observations, that's awesome. That helps us get a better understanding. But I think it's most important that you all get out and about and get to engage with these spaces, learn the names of these plant relatives, and yeah, just enjoy the fact that the weather's only getting better for at least a while here. So with that, if there are more questions, we can stick on. I'm going to put up a little poll, which is entirely anonymous and just gives us a bit of a chance to understand how things went. If you want to vote on that poll before you leave, that would be great. And like I said, I will be sending out a series of links and follow-up for a whole host of events and resources. So presenters, if there are any resources or links that you'd like me to include, maybe just send me an email.
Wopida Tanka Pidamaya Yapi. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a really good evening. After a long day of work, sometimes the last thing you want to do is hop on another webinar and keep looking at your screen. But I really enjoyed seeing everybody's faces and being in community with everyone. So I just want to say Wopida Tanka, many thanks. And I hope to see everybody again soon.
Yeah, thank you, to all our presenters too, especially to our staff members from the B Squad who have been staff members for about a day. That is incredible, and you are all really brave. We just really appreciate everybody spending some time with us tonight. I wanted to echo what you said, Michaela. It is really nice to be able to close my laptop here soon and still see daylight outside. That is, have not gotten used to that yet.